Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom, warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Let us continue studying the words of my perfect teacher. In the words of my perfect teacher, we are now discussing the common preliminaries. In the common preliminaries, we have already covered the precious human life and impermanence. Now we are discussing the third topic, the suffering of samsara. Previously, we have described the sufferings of hell beings, hungry ghosts, and animals. We also discussed the sufferings of celestial realms, demigods, and the human realm. In summary, all 6 realms of samsara are entirely of the nature of suffering. This nature of suffering is not something we just speak about casually saying, samsara is all suffering, samsara is like a burning house. But truly, from the depths of our heart, wherever we are reborn, we truly cannot escape suffering. When every practitioner truly generates such conviction from their heart at that time, they become a true practitioner. Therefore, among our current Buddhist communities, those who appear to study Buddhism have taken refuge or are ordained. Such superficial practitioners are quite numerous. But those who have truly seen through the world, from the depths of their hearts, to see through the world means having no desire for any worldly beauty. Of course, this does not mean those who have suffered some psychological setbacks and feel that everything external is ugly. That's not it. Truly having seen clearly that all 6 realms of samsara are inseparable from suffering, once we generate such conviction in our hearts. The foundation of spiritual practice has been established, so I believe that among many current practitioners, superficial practitioners are relatively numerous. But in reality, whether they are so-called great masters, ordinary practitioners, or those who have just entered the Buddhist path, all greatly lack inner conviction. Inner conviction is not what others say, that we simply repeat. Therefore, in the process of practice, everyone should try to meditate daily, contemplating the teachings repeatedly. This is analytical meditation, because there are 2 types of meditation. One is calm-abiding meditation, which is direct resting in equanimity. Another type is analytical meditation, contemplating every teaching of Buddhism repeatedly. Through contemplation, one completely understands, and one's mind completely harmonizes with the object of meditation. Such a state, such a method, is also called spiritual practice. Therefore, having only study without practice cannot be considered truly Buddhist. Of course, most importantly, one must first study and contemplate. Current Buddhists lack basic theoretical knowledge of Buddhism. Many Buddhists don't understand even basic principles. This is very regrettable. Just like any theory in the world, if you don't understand basic principles, doing anything becomes very difficult. So currently, whether in Chinese Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism is slightly better, as each monastery should have places for study, customs, traditions, Buddhist academies, and so forth. But in Chinese Buddhism, indeed many monasteries, though some do have places for study, but many monasteries lack communities for study, because in the Han regions, quite many people don't study Buddhism. In a city, for example, on the 8th day of the 4th month or during monthly festivals, nearby monasteries are crowded with people. But among them, how many have truly studied the essence of Buddhism, not to mention the Buddhist teachings on emptiness and no self, but basic principles of karma, past and future lives, and theories of worldly right view? How many people understand these? Everyone should be very clear. Therefore, we now study and practice simultaneously. These 2 are extremely important for Buddhists and are the goals of long-term spiritual cultivation. Now, continuing from the previous content, previously, we have described the 6 realms, not to mention personally witnessing the scenes of hell. Even just seeing pictures of hell would cause people to develop terror and fear, giving rise to renunciation. If we were personally reborn in hell, that kind of suffering is unimaginable and truly unbearable. When we usually see descriptions or pictures of hell, our hearts are also filled with extreme terror. Therefore, the world-honored one also required painting the fivefold wheel of samsara on monastery gates. The Buddha spoke about this in the 17th volume of Mulasarvastivada Vinaya. Previously, after Anathapindika offered the garden and monastery to the Buddha, he himself felt that just having monastery without good paintings on it wouldn't be appropriate, so paintings should be made. Later, when he asked the Buddha required, for example, at monastery gates, there should be the 4 great kings at the gates of monastery halls, there should be the 6 realms wheel. The fivefold wheel is also called the 6 realms wheel. Below are images of hell, beings, hungry ghosts, and animals. In the middle are humans and demigods. Above are celestial realms. Generally, monasteries all have these. The Buddha also required, for example, in hospitals, there should be images of the Buddha personally caring for patients. I've seen some hospitals like Tsuchi that have such images. They should be following these Vinaya rules. Also, in one's bedroom, to avoid attachment to the body, paintings of white bones and skulls are required. Thai Buddhists often have these in their homes and dormitories. I often saw them when I visited before. The Buddha made these requirements in this sutra. Also, in another volume of the Vinaya Sutra at that time, Maudgalyayana went to hell and saw many terrifying scenes. After returning, he told the Buddha said these should be painted at the entrance of the Dharma hall so that many monks would develop renunciation towards samsara upon seeing them. Also, when people visit monasteries and Dharma halls, people nearby should explain these to them one by one. So, in Tibet, almost every monastery has fivefold wheels of samsara at the sides and entrances of Dharma halls. Does our great Dharma hall have them? It should, right? Below the great Dharma hall, on the sides, you can look for yourselves later. I've seen some monasteries at Mount Juhua and Mount Putuo with samsara displays. Especially some hell displays are particularly terrifying to see. Do Han Chinese monasteries have them at their gates? They do? At monastery gates? Which monasteries have them? Are there any? Most don't have them. When you become abbots of monasteries in the future, paint them at the gates, okay? This is very important. The Vinaya clearly explains how to paint them and color coordination. Protector Nagarjuna says in letter to a friend, even seeing or hearing hell images, remembering, reciting, or creating forms can generate fearful minds. How much more actually receiving karmic results? If we often hear stories about hell, see hell paintings and statues, and also, when we have time, often contemplate the various sufferings in hell. In this way, people with true mindfulness and awareness will develop terror and fearful minds. Then if our own bodies were actually cast into hell, experiencing the karmic results and sufferings of hell, how could we endure it? It would be extremely frightening. Everyone knows that when we usually hear stories about prisons, they are also very terrifying. If you were to fall into prison in this life, how would it be when experiencing that suffering? But hell far exceeds all kinds of human suffering. So people with right knowledge and awareness should pay attention upon hearing about hell or seeing its representations and not create negative karma. Of course, some people have particularly heavy wrong views. After hearing these words, they treat them like stories. This is related to past and present educational environments. But actually, whether you believe it or not, truly, as long as you create negative karma, you will experience this suffering. This is infallible karma. You will definitely experience this suffering. So many of us here should on one hand have terror toward hell. This is very important. Having terror leads to careful consideration of actions. Contemplating such numerous sufferings of samsara, we should sincerely let go of all trivial matters of this worldly life. If you truly contemplate one by one all the various sufferings of the 6 realms from heaven above to hell below, you will have little interest in various worldly dharmas, fame and profit in this life, feeling they have no great meaning. No matter what you do, it's actually a cause for samsara. You can completely see through and let go of trivial matters in this life. Why do many great masters in the Han regions often say, see through, let go, be at ease? Indeed, this is very important in mind training. In Opening the Door of Mind Training, the first chapter's first content discusses abandoning this life. This doesn't mean we are particularly negative, as if Buddhists can't even enjoy basic worldly life. It's not like that. Buddhists can also enjoy life. But whether there is true value in life's enjoyments in this regard, Buddhism has deeper and higher methods of analysis and observation. So here it says we should ultimately see through all trivial matters. If your heart stubbornly clings to trivial matters of this life, then even if you superficially pretend to practice, you cannot truly embark on the path of Dharma. If you inwardly continue to cling to various worldly dharmas, superficially you may begin practicing, become ordained, or do many outward things, but actually, have you truly entered the path of practice? You have not. The true path of practice is actually seeing through this life. You completely understand the truth of all worldly matters. When you understand such principles, even the principles of one verse, perhaps you will have the opportunity to attain liberation in this life. I remember in the Sutra of the Great Assembly it says, if sentient beings abandon the pleasures of 5 desires and approach the Tathagata to listen to the true Dharma, sincerely upholding the meaning of one verse, such a person attains liberation like the former Buddhas. There is such a verse, meaning if sentient beings truly abandon the 5 desires, the thoughts, attachments, and cravings of emotions and desires, and properly approach a guru like the Tathagata to receive true Dharma in this way, even the content of one verse will bring liberation to this person. We know that previous Buddhas like Buddha Shakyamuni, Buddha Kashyapa, many Buddhas, You're so happy that I forgot Buddha Krakuchanda. When they generated bodhicitta in their causal stage, they heard one verse before the Tathagata. Later they embarked on the true path of liberation, truly entering the path of liberation. So when we have the opportunity, even hearing one class or the principles of one verse, if you contemplate it repeatedly, it will change your life's path gradually, truly entering the path of liberation. So what we are teaching here is renunciation. Actually, renunciation in Buddhism, some people say, renunciation and bodhicitta are very simple. I want to seek the highest great perfection. Great perfection is also very special, but if you first lack the foundation of basic renunciation and bodhicitta, seeking great perfection and great empowerments would likely be quite difficult. Not to mention anything else, the requirements for renunciation are indeed very high. Whether householders or monastics, let us think is our current purpose of practice to attain liberation or to obtain human and celestial merit, or not even having human and celestial merit for future lives. Now many denominations like Christianity and some religions also have some aspirations for future celestial positions. Some people don't even have this, merely wanting this life to be peaceful and safe, or work to go smoothly, family harmony and so forth, particularly simple, immediate matters. In this case, they can't even match the human and celestial vehicle. So, renunciation should be very profound. We can say, previously, when Venerable Atisha was approaching parinirvana, a yogi named Chachecho asked at that time, after your parinirvana, I will go practice. He said, Master, after you pass away, I will definitely practice well. The master said, will practice necessarily lead to true Dharma? He said, practicing is good, but will practice truly become Dharma? It won't necessarily become Dharma. Then that yogi felt it was somewhat difficult. Perhaps the master doesn't really praise practice. He said he would change his mind. Then I won't go practice. I will teach and explain Dharma to many sentient beings every day. I will turn the Dharma wheel, representing you. After you die, I will specifically represent you in turning the Dharma wheel, okay? The master said, will teaching necessarily lead to true Dharma? He seemed to disagree. Not too agreeable about practice, not too agreeable about teaching either. He asked, then what should I do? Originally, teaching and practice were the master's favorite things. After your parinirvana, you won't let me do these two great things. Isn't this somewhat? What exactly should I do? Finally, Venerable Atisha said decisively, all your practice should rely on Venerable Dromtonpa. The main thing is to abandon this life. What was his final pith instruction? Of course, teaching and practice are both very good, but if your teaching and practice lack the foundation of seeing through this life, you might superficially go teach first. Because you haven't seen through, after some time. You'll become one with the group you're teaching, and ultimately you won't be able to liberate yourself. If you go practice, temporarily you might. After I pass away, you might temporarily practice in the mountains for a few days. But if you haven't seen through this life, after some time, you as a practitioner might fall into worldly life. So neither of these two is very crucial. What's crucial? You should continue to rely on Venerable Dromtonpa, because Venerable Atisha, according to some biographies, the main purpose of coming to Tibet was to liberate one person, a Tibetan householder. Who was this householder? Venerable Dromtonpa. Tibet also has this saying, Lama Tsongkhapa's purpose in coming to the human realm was for Gyaltsabje and Kedrupje to liberate these two, and also two treatises, distinguishing definitive and provisional meaning, and good explanation of secret intent commentary. Lama Tsongkhapa came to the human realm for two treatises and two people. Venerable Atisha came to Tibet to liberate Venerable Dromtonpa. Venerable Atisha felt, after I pass away, you should still rely on a guru. You cannot leave immediately after I pass away. You might not withstand various external storms and tests, and ultimately you yourself might turn into worldly life. So here it is very clearly stated, one must see through this life previously. Venerable Dromtonpa, once people from certain valley invited Venerable Dromtonpa to propagate Buddhism. He told his disciple, Auspicious Freedom, please help me teach Dharma there. I am currently practicing seeing through this life and don't wish to go there to teach. Venerable Dromtonpa often stayed in the mountains, in the forests of Radrang Monastery, every day. I am one who seeks liberation. May I not be bound by fame and gain. He recited this verse every day for practice, so people who truly seek liberation will never seek worldly fame, status, or wealth. Absolutely never. Why? Because in their hearts they see fame, profit, and wealth as very light and will absolutely not be swept away by these. But in the degenerate age, indeed, people who have completely abandoned fame, gain, and the 8 worldly concerns are very, very few. Previously, a disciple named Nyingma asked Venerable Sakya Pandita, he said, What is the cause of abandoning this life? The Pandita replied, When you understand that all trivial matters of samsara have no meaning whatsoever, then you understand the cause of abandoning this life. He said, What is the condition for abandoning this life? He again replied, All phenomena, that is, the defects of samsara. What is the measure? What is the degree achieved? He said, When you see the 8 worldly concerns as light and have no interest in them, finally, what is the sign obtained? He said, Not being polluted by the 8 worldly concerns. Thus he answered these 4 questions one by one. It seems this is in opening the door of mind training. We taught this before. You can look at it later. So the most crucial thing for practitioners is not being turned by the 8 worldly concerns. This is a very crucial matter. There is another story. A monk was circumambulating Radrang Monastery. Radrang Monastery is the first monastery of the Kadampa school. Now it's said to be not very far from Lhasa. In some Kadampa teachings, many qualities of Radrang Monastery are explained. It seems its merit is even greater than the Potala Palace and the Jowa Buddha of Lhasa. I have seen this before. Previously, some great masters from our academy all went into retreat there. I heard that place has beautiful mountains and clear waters, a very good place for practice. When you go to Lhasa, have you been there? Radrang Monastery. You often go to Lhasa. Oh my, you haven't been there. That's where Venerable Dromtonpa's monastery is. Raise your hands if you've been there. Lhasa people haven't been there. Many of you are from Lhasa, aren't you? He was circumambulating Radrang Monastery at that time. We often circumambulate stupas and monasteries. Everyone knows this has great merit. When this monk was circumambulating the monastery, he encountered Venerable Dromtonpa Gyalwa Jungne Geshe. Dromtonpa said, Venerable One, circumambulating the monastery is certainly delightful, but wouldn't it be better if you could practice a truly effective Dharma method? He seemed to see that physical circumambulation, including our circumambulating stupas, Dharma halls, and Buddha statues, of course, has merit. There's nothing to say about that. But according to Venerable Dromtonpa's words, this is a delightful thing. It is a merit, but wouldn't it be better if you practiced a truly beneficial Dharma? This venerable one thought, oh, perhaps circumambulating halls and stupas doesn't have great merit. He thought in his heart, reciting Mahayana sutras has greater merit than circumambulating stupas. So he went to the monastery corridor to recite sutras. This was also very meaningful. He began reciting the Diamond Sutra and Prajnaparamita. He began loudly reciting Mahayana sutras. But the Geshe also didn't seem very pleased. He said, reciting sutras is certainly delightful. But if you could practice a truly more effective Dharma method, wouldn't that be better? Outwardly, he didn't particularly praise sutra recitation either. This monk thought, oh, in that case, perhaps sutra recitation doesn't have great merit, and circumambulation doesn't have great merit either. Then perhaps Chan meditation would be good. Practicing meditation should have greater merit than sutra recitation and circumambulation. So he put down the sutras and closed his eyes in meditation on the bed. He began retreat meditation. Venerable Dromtonpa answered the same way. Meditation is also a delightful thing. But if you could practice a truly effective Dharma method, wouldn't that be better? You see, physical circumambulation, verbal recitation of sutras, and mental Chan meditation, these three Dharma methods we usually say should have great merit. Circumambulation, sutra recitation, and Chan meditation. Whether Chinese Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, everyone considers them to have great merit, but Venerable Dromtonpa didn't particularly praise any of them. At that time the monk couldn't think of any other methods. He could only ask Geshe Dromtonpa, Venerable One, what should I do then? At that time, because he didn't agree with these few good deeds in this way, he couldn't think of any other methods. He said, Venerable One, then how should I practice? You see, you don't praise sutra recitation, meditation, or circumambulation. Then what should I practice? Then Venerable Dromtonpa told him, abandon this life, abandon this life. In opening the door of mind training, it says this 3 times. Abandon this life, abandon this life, abandon this life. That is, see through this life, see through this life, see through this life. Among all Dharma methods, this is very crucial. If we haven't seen through this life, I think this way, what he said is very correct. When we taught opening the door of mind training and the precious garland of mountain practices, at that time, many Dharma friends felt, if you haven't seen through this life, no Dharma practice can succeed. Superficially, temporarily shaving your head and wearing robes. Look, do I look good? Very good. I'm ready today. No. Some people wanting to ordain are particularly anxious. I say, tomorrow in 4 months. No, I can't wait. 4 months, not even 4 days. Can I do it today? Look, I've already bought the clothes. I think monastic robes look so good, I must wear them. But if you haven't seen through this life, even if you shave your head, even if you cut off your ears, it's useless. So truly from the depths of one's heart can I say shave the ears, cut off, right? So true practitioners, whether householders or monastics, great masters of the past, all said this, if you are a true practitioner, then toward all fame, gain, and worldly dharmas of this life, you have no great interest. At that time, practice should be complete. All trivial matters of this dusty world will cause oneself from the present until forever to be unable to attain liberation from samsaric suffering. Therefore, we must completely sever connections with this life and cultivate future life bodhi. So true ordination and true practice means turning away from worldly 5 desires, for renouncing and turning away from desires, swiftly realizing the supreme meaning. This is true practice of pure conduct, not false ordination. This should be recorded in the Itivutaka, for renouncing and turning away from desires, swiftly realizing the supreme meaning. This is true practice of pure conduct, not false ordination. The meaning is that our true ordination is when you have seen through the world and feel it has no meaning. At that time, you can quickly realize the supreme meaning. This is a true practitioner, while your superficial aspects, such as your dress and appearance, are not what an ordained person should pursue. So truly seeing through from the depths of one's heart is indeed very important. If you see through from the depths of your heart, practicing any Dharma becomes easy, because your goal is not for this life. I often think this way. For example, when some people go to teach Dharma, the purpose of teaching, if it's in this life for finding some money, a position, for some wealth, with self-centered goals, as the center, temporarily there might be some way out, but ultimately it won't succeed, so it should be completely, either for sentient beings or for seeking Bodhi. What are the two conditions of bodhicitta? That sentient beings leave samsara and attain the supreme result. This is very important, so it has been explained here. To seek the fruition of Bodhi, one must have renunciation. The one who can skillfully show us liberation from birth and death and realization of sainthood is only a guru endowed with Dharma characteristics. Truly showing us the right path and transcendent Dharma, only a guru with Dharma characteristics can show us. No other person can accomplish this. Why do we say rely on the guru, rely on the guru? The reason for relying on the guru is because only the guru can guide us away from samsara. Besides this, no one in the world who is particularly good to you can do this. For example, in the world, only teachers guide us and give us opportunities to study. Other relatives and friends may not necessarily benefit you. Similarly, on the path of liberation, the guru is extremely important and cannot be separated from. Therefore, regarding this life's parents, relatives, friends, wealth and enjoyments, all of everything, abandon them like saliva and be content with clothing, food and shelter. Be casual about clothing, food and shelter. If conditions are sufficient, eating and dressing well is fine. If conditions are not sufficient, you cannot toil every day for food and drink. Wholeheartedly practice the true Dharma. This is a true liberator. For liberation, for the true Dharma, give everything, use all your time. The famous Indian Padampa Sangye said, "These things and objects are like passing clouds and smoke. Never cling to them as permanent." Our present worldly wealth and everything are all passing clouds and smoke, disappearing in a moment like dreams and illusions. There is no truly real meaning. For example, when I was studying back then, I was particularly attached to the wealth and clothes of that time, but now looking back, it's all finished, all dreams and illusions. The objects I'm particularly attached to today, after a few more years, will also have no substance whatsoever. So we'd better not cling to them as permanent things. All fame is like echoes in empty valleys. Never chase fame and seek profit. You should practice the nature of phenomena. Now, some people particularly love fame. For fame, they're willing to give up everything they have. Actually, this is also a sign of poor practice. What use is it to be famous? Even if all people in the world know everything about you when you die, fame has no use whatsoever. So in the Buddhist sutras, in the Dharma Wheel of Non-Regression Sutra, it says, if one values fame highly, this person is far from Bodhi. If one particularly loves and values fame, this person is already far from Bodhi. Fame is like echoes, manifold due to discrimination. Fame is completely like echoes in empty valleys. It's just that people discriminate and expand the value of fame in various ways, always using various methods to make their fame known and beautifully spread. Many people use various ways to do these things. But actually, especially as practitioners, whether you're ordained or a householder, if you've seen through this life and seek liberation, it's best not to be particularly attached to fame. I remember in Master Lianchi's record of the exalted acts of Buddhist monastics. There's a very good story. During the 5 Dynasties period, Master Hengqiao taught sutras for over 20 years. He always lived a particularly pure life of contentment with few desires. Later, a person called Lord Li requested him to go to the king. The king was prepared to bestow robes upon him. Just like now, when national leaders receive someone and specially award them certificates. The treatment was quite high at that time, but he consistently refused to go. He said, "I made a vow to spend my whole life teaching and explaining Dharma, wearing humble brown robes until old floating cups, the way, incomplete. I vow to die transmitting sutras and treatises, not to be tainted by profit and fame in life." What does his verse mean? He said, "I now wear these unreal clothes, wearing robes not very substantially, like floating cups." Floating cups. It seems like cups floating on water. When drinking wine, there was a method. It's very unreal, drifting. Living in such a way, if I now seek fame and profit like this, there's no real practice. The Master's words should be very humble. What are his final words? He said, "I vow to die transmitting sutras and treatises, not to be tainted by profit and fame in life. I vow to spend my whole life teaching Dharma, transmitting sutras and treatises until death. I don't want to go to the palace to seek fame and profit among worldly people." So this verse, many Dharma friends and teachers should often contemplate. Throughout my life, I teach and explain Dharma for everyone. I do beneficial things for everyone, not to be polluted by fame and wealth. Once polluted, I'm afraid one's own practice won't succeed, but truly resisting such temptations in the face of 5 desires is still very difficult. For example, if some king or leader gives you a very high position, in this case, some people might think, forget about teaching Dharma, I'll just follow you around. Always pursuing fame. This is not what practitioners should do, so, like many great masters of the past, spend your whole life teaching and explaining Dharma, not to be polluted by various worldly fame. This is particularly important. Also, it says here, beautiful clothes are like brilliant rainbows. One should wear tattered garments and practice. No matter how good your clothes, they are actually useless when you die. Wearing ordinary clothes is just the same. Your most expensive designer clothes, costing thousands or tens of thousands, have no great difference in value from ordinary worldly clothes. One's own body is actually a stinking skin bag of pus, blood, and yellow fluid. Never be particularly attached and cherishing. Delicious food is also the cause of excrement. Never spend all day toiling and rushing about just to fill your stomach. True practitioners, like great masters of the past, lived on wild grass or tree leaves as clothing and food. Master Lianqi seems to say in his motto poetry, "Eating grass is better than an empty stomach. A thatched hut surpasses sleeping in the open. If people understand contentment, all afflictions are eliminated at once." This is what he said. If people eat wild grass, that's already better than having an empty stomach. Living in a thatched hut is better than sleeping in the open. So if people know contentment with few desires, all afflictions and suffering are eliminated at once. We now spend every day on clothes and food comparing with others in various ways. Especially in big cities, life pressure is indeed very great. Everyone has unlimited pursuits. These pursuits simply cannot be achieved in our brief few decades. The mind is limitless, but external material conditions are limited, so unlimited pursuit trying to obtain limited material is a very difficult thing. So true practitioners won't particularly pursue external fame and wealth. If obtained effortlessly, they can casually enjoy it. But if you can't obtain it, you cannot deliberately or specially beg for it, feeling that external conditions will bring forth enemies on all sides. One should dwell in deep mountains and other quiet places. If you go among crowds into particularly chaotic society, your discriminating thoughts and adverse conditions will arise, so often dwelling in quiet places. True practitioners dwell in quiet places. The thorns of confusion will pierce the heart, so one should practice emptiness and equality. Not sparing body and life, not tainted by love for relatives. Diligently practicing emptiness and selflessness, this can accomplish bodhi. This seems to be explained in the absorption of the Thus Gone One's Wisdom Seal Sutra. That sutra says we don't spare our body and don't spare our life. It's best not to let relatives, friends, and various social worldly matters disturb and pollute our mental continuum if we constantly and persistently practice the meaning of selflessness and emptiness. Because Buddha Shakyamuni's highest teaching is selfless emptiness. If we can truly practice selflessness and emptiness, then accomplishing bodhi won't be difficult. So those with the karmic connection to practice selfless emptiness are very few. Not everyone has this opportunity, just like worldly wealth. Not everyone necessarily has the karmic connection. True worldly practice can only be enjoyed by individual people. Here it says, all needs come from one's own mind. We must strictly guard and protect this mind of ours. Our liberation and all future happiness all come from this wish-fulfilling jewel of our mind. As Venerable Sarah has said, the mind is a wish-fulfilling jewel, so we often use the Guru's pith instructions to maintain this heart of ours. This is very important. The wish-fulfilling jewel is inherent. Never be attached to food and wealth. Our mind is a wish-fulfilling jewel. If we rely on the Guru's pith instructions to observe or recognize its nature, all wisdom and compassion will naturally flow forth. Never let it go astray. Don't let meaningless daily eating and wearing worldly people spend every day just for eating, drinking, and entertainment. In the morning, what shall we eat for lunch today? After finishing lunch, what shall we eat for dinner? After finishing dinner, what shall we eat tomorrow morning? People seem to live solely for 3 meals a day. Then there's clothing, dressing up, and so on. Many people's attention is focused only on living for their own food and clothing. Actually, this is not very meaningful. Everyone should understand this principle. The mind itself manifests various karmas. Never revolve around food and drink. This is the same meaning as what I just said. The mind itself can manifest all kinds of karmas if we focus our minds solely on things that are utterly meaningless. Excessive idle chatter can only become the source of disputes. One should remain silent like a mute person. Speaking too many meaningless words creates obstacles for liberation and everything else. Therefore, it's better to often maintain silence. The mind itself manifests various karmas. Never revolve around food and drink. In the past, Wang Anshi had a certain practice. No matter what dishes or meat were placed before him, he would eat directly, without any attachment to food and drink. Later, Su Shun, Su Dongpo's father, was particularly dissatisfied and specifically wrote on distinguishing traitors for him. However, later people felt that this was also a kind of spiritual attainment. It should have been during Emperor Shenzong's reign that he became prime minister. Among worldly people, some are not too attached to food and drink. This is also a good thing. If you're constantly picky and revolving around food, this indeed has no real meaning. People in cities nowadays are not like this. For today's lunch, they have to sit in cars for 3 or 4 hours, stuck in traffic. After finishing lunch, who's treating for dinner? Should I be the one treating? Then in the evening too, basically starting from afternoon, they begin driving for dinner. At the dinner table, they also spend 2 or 3 hours there. Actually, eating a meal is very simple for people, but why spend so much time? But there's no choice. People's habits and ignorance have become like this. This is also one way of saying it. The source of blessings arises from within the heart. One should pray to the Guru and Yidam. Constantly praying to the Guru and Yidam is very important. For a person's practice to succeed, one's mind must receive the blessings of the Guru and all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Without receiving these blessings, practicing any Dharma is indeed very difficult. For example, in spring, when the entire earth begins to warm up, all plants and vegetation grow without any difficulty. When our minds receive the blessings of Yidams, Gurus, and all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we should always pray for these blessings. Some Buddhists say, "Oh, prayer is just an action, a ritual, a formality. It's unnecessary." This kind of statement is incorrect. We should constantly pray to our Yidam. The Yidam will constantly give you invisible guidance at all times. Ultimately, one will have favorable conditions for enlightenment, so this is extremely important. Living in one place for a long time, one might even find faults with the Buddha. Don't stay in one place for years and years. If you constantly stay by someone's side, you'll often develop wrong views about them. So it's better to frequently change gurus and change practice centers, travel around. This way you'll have a sense of freshness. Otherwise, you'll eventually feel somewhat numb to everything. Always be humble and cautious. Never be proud and complacent. Confucius once said, "When full, it overturns." There's something called a qi vessel. I've seen it before. It cannot be filled completely. If filled, it will tip over. Everything inside will spill out completely. So people must never have arrogant minds. With an arrogant mind, that person will definitely end up in misfortune. So don't have an arrogant mind. Time flies swiftly, and time waits for no one. One must decisively practice the Dharma. Time will not wait for us. The years of human life are limited, so when there's an opportunity, one must immediately practice. Don't procrastinate. Next year, the year after, in 3, 4, 5, 10 years, I'll become a monk. I'll practice. Such opportunities may not necessarily arise. So when encountering good Dharma, one should seize the time to practice. We in this life are like travelers. Never exhaust your efforts to painstakingly build houses as temporary dwelling places. Don't toil day after day for houses. We came here not to build houses or engage in real estate, but to cultivate the mind, not houses. Don't confuse mind cultivation with house cultivation. I mentioned before, there was someone who was also considered a monastic who spent many years building a house. After finishing the house, the person died. The Dharma wasn't practiced. The house was built well, but it was never used. So nowadays, people in cities also live for houses. They make installment payments their whole lives. Originally, houses should be useful for oneself, but the house is not only useless for oneself. I'm living to support the house. Some worldly people think, because others do this, I should do this too. If I don't do this, I seem to be falling behind society. Sometimes from a Buddhist perspective, people live very tiredly. So as practitioners, practice should be primary, not other things. Of course, having no dwelling place might not work, but priorities should still be clear. At any time, any trivial matters have not the slightest benefit. One should practice the Dharma with feet firmly on the ground. One's body will eventually be consumed by small insects and finally disappear without a trace. And when this day will come, no one can determine. One absolutely cannot continue to be mediocre and scattered in this life. Relatives and friends are like birds in the forest. Don't always worry about them constantly. Relatives and friends, people all think these are my family, my relatives. Actually, like birds in the forest temporarily gathering together. When conditions disperse, they will all leave. There's nothing of real substantial meaning. So worrying day after day for family and relatives indeed has no substantial meaning. Devoted faith is like fertile fields. Never neglect it and let it become a barren wasteland of afflictions. Faith is very important. It's like fertile fields. There was once a person who, when seeing Shariputra, developed a little faith in him. When seeing the Buddha, he had no faith in the Buddha. Later, when Shariputra was begging for alms, the weather was quite dry. That person said, "Bhikshu," because he was someone who specialized in watering trees. He said, "Bhikshu, you sit there together with the tree. I'll sprinkle some water on you too while I'm at it." Seeing that he seemed very hot, he sprinkled water on him. As a result of this merit, he was reborn in the heavenly realm. After reaching the heavenly realm, using his divine powers to observe, he realized it was the merit of sprinkling water that led to his heavenly rebirth. Then he came down to make offerings to Shariputra. Finally, he attained stream entry. So sometimes when we encounter extraordinarily excellent merit fields, even our small faith can be effective. The precious human life is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. Never give it to the enemies of attachment and aversion. Samaya vows are like watchtowers. Watchtowers cannot be destroyed. Once destroyed, both self and others are ruined. Never let them be polluted by the faults of negative karma. When the Vajrasattva is present in the world, never be lazy in practicing the Dharma. When the Acharya is present, the conditions for practice are extraordinarily excellent. Therefore, never casually give up or fail to seek the Dharma. This is an extremely regrettable thing. So here it speaks of practice. Seeing through this present life is very important. Seeing through this present life can be practiced by both monastics and lay people. Chinese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism should have the same methods of practice. For example, in China, I once saw in the records of the Source Mirror the teachings of layman Pang. He was from the Tang dynasty. You might all know of him. He was a layperson who traveled everywhere. He regarded wealth and fame very lightly. He often went to Master Daoyi and many Chan masters to seek the Dharma. Later he became enlightened. After enlightenment he returned home and put all the gold, silver and treasures in boxes, took them by boat to the Xiang River in Hunan and threw them all away, all the treasures. Many people said to him, "You shouldn't do this. If you don't want them yourself, it would be better to use the gold, silver and treasures to help others." Later he said, "These are also useless. Worldly people greatly value gold, but I love momentary tranquility. People especially love gold and money, but I prefer momentary silence. Too much gold disturbs the mind. In stillness one sees the true nature." He said, "If there's too much money, it will disturb one's mind. Only in tranquility can one truly see the true nature. Later, including his wife and children, they all achieved accomplishment, just like Fudashi. Although his status was that of a layperson, he saw through this present life. He regarded money and all wealth like stones without attachment. Unlike some people in cities nowadays who keep gold earrings and necklaces locked in safety deposit boxes. I heard that when safety deposit boxes are stolen, they suffer greatly. Many people live solely for money. True, great accomplished masters are not very attached to anything in this present life. At such times we gain another perspective on life and attain freedom. So if one wants to practice the Dharma earnestly and steadily, one must make every effort to recognize that all phenomena in samsara have no substantial essence. What is the cause that enables such a view to arise in one's mind stream? It is absolutely the contemplation of samsara's defects. Until such understanding arises deeply in our mind stream, we must strive to practice. Seeing through this present life is very important. What then is the standard for the contemplation of samsara's defects arising in one's mind stream? It's like Venerable Langri Thangpa. What was Langri Thangpa like? His attendants said to Venerable Langri Thangpa, "Others often call you black-faced Langri Thangpa. You should be a little happier and have some smile on your face. Otherwise, people will keep talking about you." Venerable Langri Thangpa said to his disciple, "Thinking of the suffering of the 3 realms of samsara, how could there be a smile? Look, the 3 realms are like fire pits. What is there to laugh about? There's nothing to laugh about." It's said that one day a mouse quietly stole a turquoise stone from the master's mandala offering plate. That little mouse couldn't move it, so it squeaked to call another mouse. After the other mouse came, the 2 mice. One pulled the turquoise stone while the other pushed from behind. After seeing this scene, Venerable Langri Thangpa chuckled once. Apart from this, Venerable Langri Thangpa never smiled throughout his entire life. Every day he was sorrowful and unhappy. What was the reason? It wasn't that Langri Thangpa had a bad personality. He was constantly thinking, "Alas, the 3 realms of samsara are so painful. Sentient beings are so suffering," always thinking this way. There was no opportunity for smiles. He couldn't think of smiling. Contemplating the suffering of samsara is truly the root of entering the Dharma from the heart, having faith in cause and effect, renouncing this life, and having compassion for sentient beings, all these qualities of the holy path. Our contemplation of samsara's suffering is the root of all paths. The root of generating compassion is also this. The root of seeing through this life, everything is this. Buddha Shakyamuni turned the wheel of Dharma 3 times. During the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, he first said to the assembled bhikshus, "This is suffering. Know suffering. Samsara is suffering. You must know suffering. If you don't know this, you'll constantly be immersed in it. I'm so happy. Samsara is so joyful. Smoking, drinking, everything is so delightful. This is just a kind of intoxication, not necessarily truly recognizing the true nature." So, until such certainty arises in one's mind stream, one must steadily contemplate the suffering of samsara. Truly, each of us must practice contemplating samsara's suffering. Without this understanding, your practice may not necessarily succeed. So, Patrul Rinpoche concludes with a verse, "Though seeing samsara's suffering, still we cling. Though fearing the dangers of lower realms, still we do evil. I and sentient beings like me on wrong paths, may we be blessed to see through and let go of this life." Though we have already seen that samsara is all suffering, we still cling to it and are attached to it daily. Each time it's beautiful clothes, delicious food, how wonderful, how joyful, daily clinging. Though we are particularly afraid when hearing about hell, hungry ghosts, and animals, we often cannot restrain our evil actions and daily create negative karma. So Patrul Rinpoche very humbly says, "May the 3 jewels bless me and sentient beings like me who are ignorant and foolish." We must let go of samsara and not remain deluded daily. Otherwise, when I die, I will have accomplished no virtuous dharma and only created a heap of negative karma. This is not worthwhile at all. In worldly terms, having encountered such Mahayana Buddhism in this life, don't think that everything is joyful. Actually, from top to bottom, everything should be very painful. In the Sutra of the Collection of the Six Perfections, there was a king named Chavi. When Chavi was king, there was an old cobbler who thought the king was very happy. Later, to make the cobbler recognize that even kings are very painful, he specifically gave him alcohol. After getting him drunk, he dressed him in all the king's clothes and placed him in the royal palace. As a result, all the ministers and consorts regarded him as the king. Everyone was very respectful to him and daily came asking for various matters. After he woke up, he was not happy at all. This matter needs handling. That matter needs handling. Extremely, extremely painful. At this time, the king again gave him alcohol. After getting him drunk, he placed him back in his cobbler's position. He felt like he had a dream where he was king for a while, but before and after he was completely intoxicated. So some scholars say this represents the relationship between past and future lives. For example, if we were kings in past lives, it's equivalent to this cobbler being king. But actually, throughout the ups and downs of samsara, there is no real happiness. But saying this, those who haven't studied Buddhism or those without a foundation in Buddhism may not necessarily understand. Life is so joyful. If you say it's suffering, then you're deliberately slandering the truth of our lives. They might say this. But if they truly understand the essence of all phenomena, I think they would also gradually come to understand such principles. Today's teaching on the defects of samsara is now complete. Among the 4 preliminaries, precious human life, impermanence of life, defects of samsara, these 3 key topics have been explained. Next we will teach cause and effect. The theory of these 4 preliminaries is now understood. If one truly practices them, I think the foundation of Buddhism has been well established. So I very much hope that each of our practitioners will definitely practice the words of my perfect teacher. The words of my perfect teacher is extremely important. If you truly want to be a Buddhist, I think the words of my perfect teacher is sufficient. In this degenerate age with thousands of sutras and countless treatises and scriptures, it's somewhat difficult to study them all in one short lifetime. Many of our Dharma friends here, wherever you go, carrying a copy of the Preliminaries is very good. Actually, reading it 10 minutes or half an hour every day, reading its contents over and over again, gradually you will also become a practitioner. Whether others praise you or mock and slander you, no matter what, your mind will truly merge with the Dharma. Just as stated in Venerable Longchenpa's teachings, mind enters the Dharma, Dharma enters the path, path dispels delusion. After delusion is dispelled, one attains realization. This is the Kadampa teaching of the 4 Dharmas. Very important. Good. This concludes today's teaching.
Bandharangara Badna Sadarda Bandharangara Badna Sadarda Bandharangara Badna Sadarda